To the breeze. Topic number 4 is Afrofuturism. Let's get it. This came with a prompt that's going to take us to YouTube. Let's watch the video and then we'll discuss it.
In 2018, something happened that shattered every truism Hollywood has held dear for the past ever. Black Panther, a story set in Africa with a mostly black cast, became the highest grossing domestic film of the year, beating even Avengers Infinity War. Take that, Thanos. And while many people may have heard the term Afrofuturism before Black Panther took the world by storm, suddenly it solidified Afrofuturism's entry into the mainstream. But while Black Panther is a milestone for Afrofuturism, it certainly isn't the sum total of the genre. Later the same year, Tomi Adeyemi's Children of Blood and Bone topped the New York Times bestseller list. And Janelle Monáe, who's been dabbling in the genre both musically and aesthetically for over a decade, released their third album, Dirty Computer. I got the t-shirt. It's an amazing album. Please listen to it. But Afrofuturism doesn't just mean science fiction plus Africa. It's a bit more nuanced than that. Afrofuturism addresses the cultural issues and concerns of the African diaspora through technoculture and science fiction, which is what Black Panther does. But you can't just wrap a lightsaber in kente cloth and call it Afrofuturism. Unless you're John Boyega, he can do it. Afrofuturism, like rap, reggae, jazz, blues, and all the music that has come out of the Black experience, is about creating art out of pain, strength, loss, and successes. It is fundamentally rooted in being denied a full history and looking to the future to correct that. In his 1994 essay, Black to the Future, author and lecturer Mark Derry asks, can a community whose past has been deliberately rubbed out and whose energies have subsequently been consumed by the search for legible traces of its history imagine possible futures? And this is where Afrofuturism comes in. Afrofuturism is Black speculative fiction, which uses science fiction as a way of telling stories about Black resistance, history, and hope. According to sociologist Alondra Nelson, who convened an early online forum on Afrofuturism, quote, Afrofuturism has emerged as a term of convenience to describe analysis, criticism, and cultural production that addresses the intersection between race and technology. Part of the resilience of Black culture and Black life is about imagining the impossible, imagining a better place, a different world. Afrofuturism draws upon the feeling of alienation inherited from the slavery of American Blacks, which it sublimates. In this conception, certain elements of Afro-American culture, such as the transcendence of spirituals, are reimagined and transposed into a new cosmic and legendary perspective, where the alienated becomes extraterrestrial. In an essay written by N.K. Jemisin from 2013 titled How Long Till Black Future Month, which later became the title of her 2018 short story collection, she discusses watching the old Hanna-Barbera cartoon, The Jetsons, and being struck at how homogeneous the series' depiction of an idyllic future is with no people of color in it. According to Jemisin, quote, there is nobody even slightly brown in the Jetsons world. Even the family android sounds white.
Here I am, sir.
This is supposed to be the real world's future, right? Albeit in a silly, humorous form. Thing is, not white people make up most of the world's population, now as well as back in the 60s when the show was created. So what happened to all those people in the minds of this show's creator? Are they beneath the clouds where the Jetsons never go? Was there an apocalypse or maybe a pogrom? Although the mainstreamification of Afrofuturism is relatively new, its themes have appeared in literature for over a century. In 1899, Charles W. Chestnut published a collection of short stories called The Conjure Woman, which discussed themes of Black resistance and revenge against antebellum culture using traditional African-American spirituality. Beginning in 1902, Of One Blood was published serially by Pauline Hopkins, which talks about a man who goes on an expedition to Ethiopia and discovers a hidden, technologically advanced civilization. It's basically Wakanda before Wakanda. The novel also explores the protagonist's own anti-Blackness and ignorance towards Black history. He goes to Ethiopia to find treasure, but instead finds his own form of Black identity. In the 1920s, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote among the first post-apocalyptic short fiction with Black subjects called The Comet. In the story, Du Bois writes about a Black man named Jim Davis, the only man left alive after a comet hits New York City and unleashes toxic gases that kill everyone except himself and a white woman named Julia. Jim rises as a symbol of the savior and hero of the narrative, a new Adam in this destroyed New York. In the book Afrofuturism, The World of Black Sci-Fi and Fantasy Culture, Yatasha L. Womack, a leading Afrofuturist, explains that the story is one of the first to portray that Blackness is not a mark of shame but a source of pride, establishing a space where Black culture can thrive. No conversation about Afrofuturism would be complete without Octavia E. Butler, widely considered the grande dame of sci-fi today. I call her the GOAT personally. Starting with the release of her first book, Pattern Master, in 1976, Butler went on to release a dozen science fiction novels featuring Afrofuturist themes. While she wasn't as appreciated in her time, renewed interest in Afrofuturism has led to a surge of new readers of her work. Her books are now often included in many high school and college required reading lists. That Butler is only recently getting her due reflects how slow the mainstream has been to take interest in Black fiction. But hey, we're getting there. Noted modern works that fall under the Afrofuturist umbrella include Nnedi Okorafor's Who Fears Death and Binti. Binti is a novella about a girl that overcomes humble beginnings and is offered a place at Mza University, one of the most prestigious institutions of higher learning in the galaxy. But a great deal of the series focuses on Binti trying to reconcile her heritage with her own natural intelligence and personal goals. An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, who was a Campbell Award nominee for Best New Writer in 2018, explores how sustained acts of abuse and violence can shape a culture and people. This one takes place on a generation shift that is not only stratified based on race, but also extremely restrictive of any nonconformity, especially with regard to gender. It is effectively coping with the violence of colonialism in space. Afrofuturist storytellers take advantage of the speculative nature of the genre by simultaneously creating new worlds and deconstructing the racial politics of this one. One of the criticisms lodged against dystopian fiction, like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, or Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games trilogy, is that even in the worst of futures, there's no place for Black bodies because either they were banished or just seemed to disappear. This is why it's important to recognize the thematic elements of Afrofuturism that go beyond the idea that Afrofuturism is just science fiction plus Africa. Afrofuturism is about reclaiming our past in order to craft our future, and that is done by infusing Black sound and stories with forward-thinking desire to see how our culture could have evolved or could still evolve, unhindered by colonial influence. Here's how author N.K. Jemisin put it as part of a panel in 2016. Quote, "I think one of the most radical things that anyone in this world can do is imagine that Black people have a future. Through Afrofuturism, Black society has a future that is beyond the clouds, just like everyone else." One final question we should ask: is Afrofuturism too broad a term? Some African authors, like Okorafor, reject the title of Afrofuturism because they do not write through the perspective of Western Blackness. Okorafor is a Nigerian American who is deeply connected to African culture, and she explains in her TED Talk how she writes science fiction through that lens. Quote, "I can best explain the difference between classic science fiction and Afrofuturism if I use the octopus analogy. Like humans, octopuses are some of the most intelligent creatures on Earth. However, octopus intelligence evolved from a different evolutionary line, so the foundation is different. The same can be said about the foundations of various forms of science fiction. In non-Western culture, the mystical coexisting with the mundane is normal." Okorafor also points to the history of Afrofuturism being associated with music, especially in the United States, with African artists as an afterthought. In short, I understand the necessity of it. I understand the use of it, but I do not consider myself an Afrofuturist. As we enter a post-Black Panther era, Afrofuturism is not just a cultural aesthetic, philosophy of science, and philosophy of history, but also a money-making machine. Disney, Marvel, and Ryan Coogler turned the story of the first Black comic book superhero into a film that became the 12th highest-grossing film of all time, with over $1.35 billion worldwide. Coogler took the story and infused it with the kind of narrative that is at the heart of Afrofuturism: the possibility that Africa and its descendants could have a powerful present and future, and made it immensely entertaining and marketable. It will genuinely be exciting to see Afrofuturism grow and expand as more Black authors tackle the questions, claim the aesthetic, and build upon its core idea that not only do Black people across the world have a future, but it's going to be pretty darn lit because we created it for ourselves.
Let me just say, I was looking at the chat during that video, and I really appreciate all the comments in the chat. I agree with much of what you guys were saying. I'm going to read some of the comments. The problem with Afrofuturism, which I'm a proponent of, I'm a fan of, the problem with it is that it's U.S. led, and so it brings that it brings that Americanism, that liberalism, and all that stuff. So you get the integrationist. That's what Octavia Butler really is. You get that integrationist in a lot of that stuff because it's coming out of the U.S. We need, like a few of you said, now read the comments, we need more Pan-African types of folks, more Africans from the continent, Africans in America and the Caribbean, etc., putting out our own work. That's one of the things I've been jotting down some notes on. Only came out with a children's book. You guys should make sure and go and check that out, by the way. But I was thinking about doing a children's book that was, under that Afrofuturism type thing that brought in that, those elements of Pan-Africanism. And my charge to you guys is, if you don't like what Afrofuturism looks like, because again of the Americanisms in it and the liberalisms in it, you guys should start making your own content. All of us should start making our own content. So, like Oni said earlier in the show, we should all be putting out some type of product or service or what have you. Here's your opportunity. In the chat, Nama X says a lot of Black people want to turn the continent into a dystopian concrete jungle. I agree about that too. We should not want a concrete country without nature. Our continent is not ours. Azuliism, I agree with you here too. Children of Blood and Bone, someone highly recommended to me. I read it. Right? Tragapi says, I don't be trusting the Black futurism because the feminism taint it with their ideology of social neoliberalism. Also, some of these Afrofuturists feel that African-centered thought is archaic. He goes on to say, I hate when authors complain about all-white cast in media because your media shouldn't care about having other people in it. Zuliism said assimilationist fiction. Nama X didn't particularly care for the Nigerian American comment as opposed to African American. I agree with that too, by the way. Trigger Happy 262 says, oh, we already know Octavia Butler does the interracial shuffle. That trailer still haunts me for how disgustingly trash it was. And she supposedly wrote a masterpiece. LOL. I meant to review that first season and I just wasn't motivated enough. I watched it. I read that book. Just wasn't motivated enough. If they do a season 2, I might do it. Azuliism says Butler is great, but her book's assimilation. Afro-Native World says we need Pan-African literature, as Baba Chinwezu wrote about in decolonizing the African mind. Right? There's been several other comments. You guys could check out the chat yourselves. With that said, let me welcome in my boy Carl Hezekiah. Carl, how are you this week?
I'm good, Coco. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Got my internet fixed. Okay, so I kind of like the whole Afrofuturism vibe. I've said before I'm really into fantasy, sci-fi, that type of stuff. So growing up, that was kind of my thing. But I do understand the comments in the chat because, like, for example, Octavia Butler, that Kindred, I watched the first couple episodes. I really couldn't get into it because it really just seemed. I mean, the part where she had to help her ancestor get raped so that way she could come about, that was crazy to me. So wasn't really a fan too much of Kindred's, but
Right.
I do understand the need for Black people to tell our own stories and because many times we are written out of fantasy and fiction and things like that. We're not included in that. So I understand the need for us to tell our own stories and things like that. But it was so interesting how she mentioned Black Panther. Like Black Panther wasn't created by two white Jewish men. You know, he debuted and he didn't even have his own comic at first. He was just a side character in Fantastic Four. So I think we can move beyond what was created by white people and create our own heroes and tell our own stories. Not show Africa, you know. But again, the assimilation part of it, you know, we have to become what they want us to be included. I don't like that. So that's just my thoughts on that. I'll yield the mic.
Thank you for that call. And by the way, let me just say this too as another call to action. With the kind of mind power that we have just here, just amongst us on the panel in the chat, like there's no reason for lack of collaboration. The kind of questions and the thinking that a trigger happy has, right? With the creative spirit of Oni or even myself or Carl or some or Buana. Like there's no reason why we can't be putting out our novellas and our short films and whatnot. So again, I want you guys to think about this stuff. There's a time where we need to step up ourselves and not just talk about things, not just critique what's out there, but actually be the ones putting out. Look, there's a Zuliism in the chat. My homeboy from college. Let's put out the films. We can start with short films. Again, call to action. Let's put out the stuff that we want to see. But we just can't keep sitting down and talking, complaining about what's out there. Let's do it ourselves. Let's be the future. With that said, let me bring in our sister, Tanzan. How are you this week?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm great. Thanks for coming through.
Yes, thank you for having me. And sorry, I'm late. So
Thank you.
on this, yes, so on this topic, I do like when people are creative. I like the idea of people coming together and actually, working and producing works of art. And especially if it's by Black people, that's, I'll definitely support it. I just don't know. Well, in the prompt, it really didn't say what the ideas are. I know it's just Africans in the future representation and all that, which is good. But it would be good to say how in the future the problems that we're facing now will be resolved. So even in science fiction, in their science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, all this stuff, the future is not just the future of technology, it's also the future of society. How do we resolve the current problems we have in society when we go out in space? So, for example, in the Star Trek, everyone is equal. They do have, some, minor characters in Star Trek. In fact, the first, case was between IR case was between the woman and the Captain Kirk. So in that universe, everybody is equal, is colorblind, and all that. They have everybody in this rainbow colored coalition. And then in others, they just don't have any Black people at all. It's just an all white paradise. So for the future Afrofuturists, yeah, future for future, for the people who are creating, they also have to have this resolution of the current problem, because the future is not somewhere out in space. Even if it is in space, it's still the continuation of the present. So the Jetsons was what people thought the natural, track of technology was going to go, and that was the arc it was following. So they thought, oh, if we have cars that are driving now on the road, eventually we might have driving cars, and so on. So it's a continuation. you can't just make up fantasy universes. You still have to have some human laws. So it's good that they're being creative, but it should also be creative in the kinds of solutions to the problems that we have right now. Because as you see in the white start, not just Star Trek, Star Wars, all of, they have found comfortable ways of resolving the problems. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they leave the earth, so they can go off in space. So for them, either there's just no black people at all, and or it's just an equal society where race is not a factor, so that's not a problem. So if that's the same solution as them, then it really is a futile endeavor. And then the other thing too is that while it's good to be creative and all that, you still have to have certain things rooted in the past. And to me, they don't seem to be grounded in anything very tangible or very solid. It's just, oh, we are there, we are doing, we're interacting with technology. It seems to me like just as something that they want to do because they are seeing it being done and it's cool. Like even that movie, Black Panther with Wakanda did not seem very African. It seemed like just, Star Treks with a bit of, like some African things, African looking things splashed. Even that whole suit with Black Panther and all that. It's just this, it looks like Superman is this leather thing, and then they put in, something African looking, and the whole place of Wakanda was very, very alien, not alien in, out the world, but very strange, to most African cultures. There were some splashes of it, but it was all very cold and unappealing. Well, to me anyway. So it's not a way. It's almost like a way to Africanize, technology instead of making Africa, comfortable with technology. They're trying to make Africa cool and all of that stuff. But I think that there's more trying to be, more like American or technology school is white. We can have that too. And yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so it's more on the tech side than the African side. That's what I see from, the short clip. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Tan, again, this is the Americanized thing that I'm saying, and I agree with your points. I'm saying that we we should commandeer this genre, and like Trigger Happy 262 said in the chat, like we should commandeer, we should write about what revolution looks like. We should write about what our African world looks like after post revolution. Like these are the things we can talk about. We could talk about our cultural systems and how it interfaces with our homegrown technology in the future. Like we could imagine these things. Because listen, as simple as that TV show Star Trek, the original series TOS, was. Do you know there was a generation or two of mofo's who grew up to work in NASA and to push technological advancements and all that kind of stuff. Like we supposed to be doing that for our people. It doesn't have to be strictly technology. It could be something cultural. It could be whatever. But we should, instead of complaining about Black Panther, we should be creating. We should be creating, the works, the literary works that we want to see. You know what I mean?
Yes. Can I just add one thing? I'm sorry. I know I did it. The other thing is this. I know it was from the previous prompt when we were talking about the scholar versus the gangster, I suppose. There's yes, I don't agree with the idea that the people on the streets are the warriors, because there is no code. The streets are only loyal to themselves. They're not loyal to any ideology. So there's no warriors without any code, leadership, organization, and all that. But the other thing, on the other hand, I think that at the same time, our relationship with scholars should also be, examined, because scholars are also, they're also biased, and sometimes we give too much, you know, um, uh, 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 too much, reverence for scholarship, versus other aspects of life. And this is also a very European thing, because somebody who has degrees, for example, is more important than somebody who is only like a blue collar worker, and so on. So while I'm not saying that scholarship is not important, it is, it actually is, but I'm saying that there are other aspects as well. So when it comes to changing society, when you look at where they change even in the Russian Revolution, they took in every single aspect of society. Everyone was involved in it, from writers to to painters to people on the manual fronts, to soldiers. Everyone was involved. If you are a writer, you are a writer for the revolution. If you're a painter, yeah. So everyone was involved. And sometimes I think we don't really give enough power to the people who have the minds to influence the minds. Because while scholarship is important, it's only going to reach a few people. Those who are in the scholarship aspect, they should be excellent at their jobs, but it's a very limited reach that you're going to find. But people who have the power to influence people, they should also be involved in doing something, in creating what they preach, in a way. So yeah.
I appreciate that time. I'm going to ask our next panelist, after I welcome him to the panel, I'm going to ask him to call to action again. Like I asked my boy Afro Native World in the chat, come up with a list of works that you think are good representations of African centered Afrofuturism. First, let me welcome in Azuli this week. Azuli, how are you? I did all that talking for this
I'm
Negro not
fine.
to be.
What? No, I'm
How
good.
are you this week?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
So,
good.
can you put together a list of some works that we're supposed to be checking out that's good Afrofuturism?
I mean, I could throw you some authors that you could read, but with the
Yeah, send them to me. Send them to me, and I'll post it on the community tab.
okay. So like I want to say that Afrofuturism is, to me, is like black people who want to be involved in the white people's future, and like Star Trek, they want to be in Star Wars, they want to be in all these things, but they just want to be a sidekick to it. We all, meanwhile, your whole culture is magic. Your whole culture is magic. So even Octavia Butler, she's a great writer, to be honest. Though I read The Pattern, something Wild Seeds. It was a tough book, but when you realize what the book is about, it's not pro us. It's just assimilation, like one love type of stuff. The characters were not fighting for um Afro or for black people's betterment. It was just assimilation. So I'm gonna say that, like, even with this lady's championing Black Panther, like Black Panther, bro, it wasn't even written by black people, bro. Like, there's something really wrong with us. So a lot of these books that people read, right, that these writers claim that are Afro, they're very passive, bro. The book that I put called The Black Drums, by my boy, I can't pronounce his name, but his name is DJ J. Lee Clark, right? He got the book called The Black God's Drums. I read that book like maybe 2 years ago. I kind of forget, but the whole point of this book, right? There's a weapon that's out there that could switch. There was a war. I think maybe it was during the Civil War or something. But the whole way to switch to switch because they were losing or something, and it's called the Black God's Drum. The drum is the most powerful, and it does something to the environment, like some some Tor type of stuff. And this dude in that book, if anybody could read it, it's a short book. That's why it could be a novella or something like that. And then it's a pretty good book. He tied science fiction with the Haitian Revolution, with the New Orleans Revolution that happened, and he did that with that book. One of the like great book that I bought from downtown Brooklyn, to be honest. And there's another book that I don't know anybody knows about, but I read, it's called the Bennu Project. To be honest, the Bennu Project, I give the guy A for effort, right? But he's not in the level of, Octavia or Achebe, but that book is such a good book to reach. Tyrone Givens. I think he self published and everything. The first book I read is called The Bennu Projects, and the Bennu Project is about how the Egyptians with futuristic power lost, and it's like three stories. I think it's two books, and how they're about to regain it back. So these are the books that I would consider Afrofuturism. These are the books. It's just authors that want to be. Oh, why can't I be part of Star Wars? Oh, let me write something so I could be next to Star Wars. Like, but Tyrone Givens, if anybody, Tyrone Givens, I read that book like maybe, and he published his own book, and I read that book maybe like 10 years ago, and that's what got me. That's what got me back to be like, yo, let me start writing my own stuff. So this guy right here, if anybody get a chance, Tyrone Givens, he has like two, I think it's two books. I only read the first one, the Bennu Projects. I don't know if he's still selling because you have to buy it from him. And the Bennu Project, the other one's called the Protocol. So it's like an Egyptian, it was crazy. But the only thing is with him, I think maybe that was his first book, or maybe it's not, but it's A for effort, A for stories, A for really using Egyptian science, quote unquote, magic science fiction to fight. This book is really good. So after that, those other that young lady right there, I don't like that passive Black Panther is just like who the hell is Black Panther? And a lot of these people, even that lady right there, N.K. Jemisim, her name. I bought 3 of her books. It's like a trilogy. I didn't read them yet, but they said she's a superb writer too. So I wouldn't the way we speak about writing our own writing. I don't think she does that, but she is giving a lot of props of being a great writer. The lady JFK, that was just on the screen just now. So at the end of the day, we saying, yo, we have to sponsor the people who. But if you my other thing is, if you can't write, don't just go write because you want to write. Because now I think Oni just said something. Like you could get a you could there's a program where you could get an AI to write a story for you, bro. This is crazy.
Yeah, I was telling people here, y'all need to get on that. I saw Oni post something along those lines earlier too, but that chat GPT shit, like get on that a little bit because folks is manipulating you with that shit. And what's funny, to just a quickly comment to something Oni said in the chat earlier, when I first got on that chat GPT thing, it didn't tell you that it had limitations. Like now it will say, oh, that's propaganda and you have to be, because I've been using it, right? That's propaganda and you have to be careful of propaganda. We don't want to paint whites or Europeans as necessarily bad. Like it didn't have that before. They recently put that shit in there.
What is that you're talking about?
Put that in there. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, what is that GP thing you're talking about? I don't know it. I don't know what that.
That's the AI thing where if you put a prompt and if you ask it a question.
Oh yeah, the kids are using that now. The kids are just
writing papers with it and all kind of shit now. Yeah.
And I think I don't know if I was talking to you guys 2 weeks ago. There was somebody that I know. She was supposed to write a paper about Afro music or whatever. The AI wrote that 3 reasons why Africans came to the New World. One was for to be slaves. The other one, no, and to for work. They were fleeing as refugees and to be slaves. In what world do somebody leave their country to be as a refugee to become a slave in another country?
Yeah, because they're propagandizing the AI now. At first, maybe it's because too many Black people got on it early, but at first it wasn't doing that. Now they've put some parameters in there where that shit is a bit limited when it comes to criticizing Europeans, European history, etc. It's very
Bro,
interesting what they're
I'm
doing.
telling you, I read the paper. The paper said black people were fleeing Africa as refugees. That's why they came to the New World. I was shocked. So we think this is a game. This is yo AI. Yo, if you don't know, and you're a new teacher or you just somebody, you could have thought that somebody wrote that. So
Yeah, so it's for us to get on that too while we can. Like Afro Native World says that writing rap songs. Kevin Carre, who used to be on the panel all the time, I spoke to him the other day. He's doing well, by the way. He sent me something. I think maybe he asked the prompt to write like a African centered poem, and this shit was dope. This is before they put in these little protocol things, but it was dope. But Urzuli, give your last word, and then I'll move on to the next panelist.
no, I was just saying that if people could read those, like I was just giving these two characters, these two, but also if we look at like what's his name, Achebe, things fall apart. I don't know, Trigger Happy. I forgot his name. I'm sorry, bro. Trigger
Yeah, Trigger
Trigger
Happy
Happy
262. Yeah.
262. I guess he doesn't like that book, but that thing falls apart. It could be also considered Afrofuturism because I don't. I mean, I like that book. I don't know why some people don't like it, but there's a lot of authors, especially African authors. When you speak about magician magic, that's futurism. That's science. Like the book that I told you, the Children of the Bones and Blood. That joint was weak, bro. Weak, weak. Speaking of, that joint, the Children of the Bones was a weak book. Very, very weak. I see what it was trying to do, but it fell flat. It fell flat. And she came out. She came out with the second book. I didn't even pick it up. Like I saw somebody reading it, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta get that." And I read it. Like the Orishas. The only thing she was talking about a group of people were banned from using their magic, and they thought they lost the magic forever, and it was coming back. But when you go deep down, I'm thinking she's gonna use Ogun, she's gonna use Obatala Shingo, or even the Adunanis from the Igbo people, or Anansi, or other. She didn't use none of that. It was just weird. I don't know if but that book is not what's his name? I didn't read his book, but I know he's dabbling in futurism too. Marlon James, he got like two books that came out, so I didn't read them yet. But there's a couple of authors that's dabbling into like those type of. I don't know if his book is Afrofuturism, but it dealt with But that's what I'm saying. I passed them.
Yeah, the thing with Things Fall Apart is I think Caribbean folks tend to I think Western Africans tend to love that book. What I've picked up over the years, I was surprised because I read that book when I was back home. So that's a long time ago. I was surprised. I noticed continental Africans don't like it for some of the things in terms of the relationship stuff. Things, between, there's some stuff in there. In fact, Gas Them Up talked about it one time on here. The interpersonal relationship between husband and wife. There's something in there. I think the husband was beating the man was beating the woman or something like that. And they have issues with that stuff. Things that we look past because we're used to that in literature. Like we're used to some degenerate type, off base type stuff in literature, but the continental Africans didn't appreciate that type of shit.
But if you look at that book, why would people focus on that? That was a bigger point about that book. Like, what? Go ahead, man. All right, I'll yield. Go ahead, bro. Next person.
No, I get you, but that was what they looked at. We looked at something else. Real Black Gentleman, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not really big on Afrofuturism. That's just not my taste. I'm not a big fiction guy in general. So I don't really have too much to say about it. Like I did read Things Fall Apart though. I definitely read that. I read that in high school. I need to read that again, but I enjoyed that. Like with Chinwezu, I'm more of a, like his like nonfiction analysis. That's just where I fall into. But like I get like sci-fi ish. I get it, but you always have to realize a lot of that is like superimposing like ideas of how life can be easier and just like fantastical stuff and just trying to put it in a world, you know what I'm saying? Like Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, yeah, could it be possible? There's some things out there floating around, maybe. I mean, but like, it's just like one of those things. It's a good story, but like, I just see too much, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not really dwelling into like a good motivational story like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not worthless. You know what I'm saying? I'm not downing it. I simply don't really go for it. I don't really need science fiction like that. I'm not mad at people writing stories. I'm not. For me, it's just not my cup of tea. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to you.
I appreciate that. Oni, you've heard everything everyone had to say. What say you? You're an author. What say you? Oni, are you there? All right, maybe Oni fell off. You guys can hear me, right?
Wait, sorry. My fault. I don't know why I didn't press this button. Yeah, fiction. Yeah. So I'm an author. I mean, I see everybody bigging up every author but me, but that's fine. I have a few. They're like, "Yo, who's the best science fiction author?" It's like, "Yo, I know this." They going through the woodwork. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just messing. Black Sands. I wouldn't really call it science fiction, but there's this brother who writes Black Sands. That's pretty cool. Bennu Project was another one, like that thing that was really mentioned. Then they got some sci-fi collections. They got Negus, African American sci-fi compilation, Black from the Future collection of Black speculative thing, Dark Matter, another collection of speculative fiction from the African diaspora. But I'm gonna be honest with you. The way how I don't like I think a lot of us are too American centered. And the way I don't like American like the way how this lady was describing Afrofuturism, and the other sister had to say, "Look, I don't go with that." That is kind of like where I'm at it too. It's like even when I was reading Bennu Project, like I couldn't finish it, because one of the things with regard to like writers of in America or something is that it's like we are so hung up on slavery, and you kind of pick that up from this presentation on Afrofuturism, where it's like, hey, we're trying to fight back, we're trying to reclaim our history, we're trying to this, we are victims of, and it's just like, I don't want that, when these white boys were enslaved. Some of them will tell you that. But like, they don't remind you about their enslavement in every damn piece of media you go through. They don't remind you about, privilege and this and that in every, oh man, the room, they don't do that, and the reason why they do it, because it's like, okay, you wrestling with something, that's fine. But like I can't, I don't personally want to read it, Norman's asking who enslaved Europeans. Let me stop getting distracted though. But who enslaved Europeans? I mean, obviously other Europeans, obviously Arabs. Everybody knows this. The Moors. It was a big thing.
You're saying that they don't write stories about that? What was Braveheart about? Did you
I'm
watch
saying
Braveheart?
not every piece of literature. I'm saying like.
Hey man, I'm waiting. So go, bro. Stay focused, brother. I'm waiting.
Yeah. So I mean like this. I mean, because I'm not even just talking about books. Period. I'm talking about like if I want to play a indie game, right? That's gritty and all that. Because this is a game I play sometimes at night, right? There's nothing about You know, like there's nothing about slavery. And I could appreciate that. I could get into the story and not feel bad or feel like somebody's getting like somebody is trying to overcome something. So I got this book right here. Matter of fact, Dark Universe. One of my favorite authors is Balagon, right? Martial artist, real martial artist. Okay. He writes books. He's like a Dungeons and Dragons type dude. He and Milton Davis, they decided to put together like a compilation, and I'm reading it, and it's like, you know, we African Americans, we're so persecuted, we're gonna make our own planet, and you know, we're gonna go on our own planet, and we're gonna, you know, blah blah. And it's just like, I don't like that complex. You know, I don't want that complex. So, like, as an author, like I said, I wrote this book, Zubiri, a long time ago, right? And Zubiri is about a Pan-Africanist, Pan-African, Pan-African nationalist in the way of, like, back in the day, I had a little bit of American consciousness too. So he sets up like a Chinatown in Brooklyn type thing. You know what I'm saying? Like a Africa town, Little Africa in Brooklyn, and you know. But Africa's united, and so sometimes he visits Africa, and it's like, you know, they all the countries are together. Like, that's what I want in my literature. You know, I want a story where it's not like, oh yeah, we slaves and stuff, right? You know, we were slaves and shit. You know, come again.
I was saying I agree, brother. I agree with that 100%. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like
you said the Bennu Project. The Bennu Project was not about being slaves, bro. Did you read this?
Nah, it starts off with the whole like I'm saying, bro.
It's a whole 400-page book, bro.
Yeah, but again, I'm not trying to, like, I can't get into the we get like these white boys is kicking our asses. Like, it's like I don't want. I'm not.
Yo, Oni, the story's about losing power and gaining power back.
I'm not into losing power, though.
You're not into losing power. So let me ask you a question. When you play a video game, the video game that you play, isn't that that's a journey that the protagonist goes to? All books have a freaking journey. Whether you have to overcome personal or whether you have to overcome the earth, a tornado, it's all about that.
I mean, look, I feel you. What I'm saying is this, right? Every damn second, every time I open up a book, there's two things to it. One I don't like is the religion. Obviously, it's all like, because I didn't even know Octavia Butler was on that interracial shit. I have, matter of fact, Parable of the Sowers as another book, and it's just like a bunch of religious talk. So I was just like, fucking pause on that. But the other thing is like you said, you starting off with your ass kicked because other people could enslave you. I don't want that. We was slaves. Like, that's what it is. I don't want that.
So you didn't watch any of the Black Panther, you didn't watch Endgame? What are you talking about?
Endgame? Endgame, what's that? What's Endgame? What's Endgame?
Endgame, the movie, the Marvel movie. You don't watch Superman? Superman starts by losing the battle and comes back and fight and wins? What are you
off of his own race, though? No, this dude just you making excuses. What I'm saying is that if your literature is just, hey man, these people are oppressing us. Oh man, these white people are so powerful. Oh man, these white people this. It's like I don't like. It's not empowering. It's disempowering. It's disturbing. It's like, oh, I'm catching these L's, and it's like, look, if you're saying that the story picks up later, I don't know. What I know is that I open up the book and I'm being told, hey man, these white people came in and they enslaved me and they kicked our asses and I'm just like, damn, another one. Like, I don't personally fucks with it. You know, sure, if you lose a fight, that's okay. If you lose in a fight because you're black and we gotta now explore the racial privilege they do and how they enslave us and all, like, it's like, come on. Like that's not the story I want.
Bro, so why are you on here though?
What do you mean, why am I on here? What are you talking about?
Why is your number black perspective? Why is that? If you're having problems with a science fiction book that says we lost to these people and then we're finding our way back to get our science back and to win back. What are you talking about, bro?
Bro, I didn't finish the book like you said. So if you're saying that's what happens, I don't know. But what I said is that I jumped into the book, and it's just like every other book I got. And I got a bunch of them where I'm trying to read it, and it's just a bunch of, and it's a bunch of like, yeah, a bunch of, you know, like that's what it is.
Only most of
But it is what it
fiction,
is.
most
I'm,
of
I'm,
Can
I'm
I?
gonna get off. I'm gonna get off because, like I
no,
said,
no.
brother
But what I'm
Barter.
saying, most books, even if you watch fiction, The Terminator, the guy starts by losing, comes back and trying to win. It's the
Bro, I
protagonist has a
understand what you're
journey.
saying, but again, you talking about two different things.
Star Wars.
You
It's
can't just be the loser because you're black. That's lame.
no, that's not because. Oh,
That's just
Can,
lame, my guy.
can I insist?
I'm gonna say this though: the white boys are not saying, "Oh, we lost because we white." They saying we lost because we lost the fight. I mean, it's okay to lose. Nobody got a problem with you losing. The problem is that you're losing because you're black, and now you're gonna talk to me about slavery. Like I don't want your interpretation of slavery. I
Yeah,
don't need that shit. But
it's
I
just indulging. It's just indulging in this shit that we went through. Like let's push past that a little bit. Let's tell stories where our impetus is the fact that we lost in the past, and we ain't trying to do that shit again. Let's tell
Okay,
those stories. Wanna go ahead?
so yeah, so I my brother made his statements very pro black perspective. One, he made his position very clear, and I respect his decision. That's he don't want to hear it, and as a person who consumes this information, he have a right to express that, and I respect that. But let me give my perspective. So let's start with Chinwe Achebe because that's the first person we talked about. I think that for me, in reading Chinwe Achebe, my favorite book from him wasn't Things Fall Apart. It was actually Man of the People. Man of the People. Uh, if you read Man of the People, anyone living in a black country who read Man of the People would be able to see so many different parallels. Especially in terms of how the political system works and how the people respond to the political system in their respective countries. And that's really my favorite book from Chinwe Achebe. Anyways, but in terms of Afrofuturism, the African Americans have their vision of what they perceive as their future to look like. And they have a right to that. For me personally, in terms of Afrofuturism, I have a Caribbean perspective. Yeah, really specifically, and I could be specific with that. I have a more so of a Afro futurist perspective from a Haitian standpoint, and I can tell you why in a minute. Erzuli one time he was on this platform and he was talking about the importance of storytelling, and he was talking about how storytelling has an impact in more of an impact into different than in the different genres or intellectualisms in terms of various different genres of what we try to do. But he says storytelling is an extremely powerful thing, and I agree with him. But I believe that sometimes uh, reality is more powerful than uh, than stories, than imagination. And as I look at Haiti's history in terms of Afrofuturism, you look at people like Charlemagne Peral, you look at people like Antonov Furman in Haiti, and the things that these brothers was accomplishing or trying to accomplish with in Haiti, and the mindset of the people who was getting behind the things that they was actually trying to accomplish with the Caicos movement in Haiti. And I'm looking at Haiti, and everyone looks at Haiti in a situation that it's in right now. And I'm thinking in a future, what Haiti could actually be. It could be the bastion for me of Afro futuristic intellectual thought, thinking, and progression for us going in really into the 22nd century. Now that seems far fetched. But if you look at the past, and I like to tap into the past and what people were thinking or thinking about, and how they was able to galvanize so many people, not only the men, the women too. You know what I mean? With this idea of having not only a nation state but an empire in Haiti. Where did that go? I'm thinking that that spirit is actually still there because it can't just disappear. The people, the children born after all this distinct, determining history. You know what I mean? I don't think that it was lost. I don't think people talk about Wakanda. Haiti is Wakanda. Haiti is fucking Wakanda, you know, and that sounds so far fetched. Haiti is Wakanda. They had the mindset. You know what I mean? I think that what is denied of them was was really um, not only advantages, but just the things that the material things that was needed to create that nation state or what we believe to be Wakanda. But they had the mind for it, galvanized in the Caribbean. You know what I mean? So, and you had all these distinct leaders coming out of that area, and many of our ancestors took reference to what was going on in that country. And I think that if that history was not interrupted, that would really be the pearl. We consider that they used to consider Haiti to be the pearl of the Caribbean, the pearl of the Caribbean. I think if that history was not interrupted, we would really see something. We would really see something like a Singapore, a modern day Singapore in the Black Caribbean. You know what I mean? And I think that great men. I go back to Gavi. I think that great men who was great in the past could be great again. And I think that unfortunately that history is interrupted. But I think that they had the mindset and the spirit to create that kind of culture. So I really and truly look at them in terms of Afrofuturism because I think that spirit is actually still there. I think that they have all the facets to create that environment, but for the money. And I think that the children not only of Haiti but the Caribbean and even Africa itself, you know, was to invest into that nation state. I think that really could really be the pearl of the Black world. Now that seems so far fetched to say at this current point, but I really believe that if you take note of the history of Haiti and what they had to endure and the mindset of the people themselves, and for me that's very important. Their story is more potent than any kind of fanciful imagination that we could talk about if you really pry into their actual history. Because I've been listening to this brother named Nefakari de Salim. Yeah, he's been going over a lot of the historical figures of Haiti and the people who have contributed to the nation state itself and the mentality behind it. That spirit, if that is could be reprised, if we could raise that spirit again, you would really see something amazing coming out of that area. So, like I said, when we talk about these ideas of Afrofuturism, I really look at Haiti. I don't really look at Afro American futurism. I don't look at even Afro Bahamian futurism. I really look at Haiti. And in terms of the future in the Western world, Nixon, I think it was Nixon. Nixon made a statement when he was in his private chambers discussing with some of his colleagues. He said that in 500 years, and this was a private thing, he said these Black people won't even be around. These people have written us out of history. You know what I mean? In their minds, they've written us out of history. And he said this years ago. And if you look at our culture as it is right now, that's feasible. You know, many Black people look at us as doomed. You know, and it's our willingness to fight against the fray of that and actually try to do something to include ourselves in the future and going forward. And I think that it really comes first and foremost with a mindset, a thinking, and a spirit. And this is me talking now, and I'm the agnostic, and I talk about spirit. But I think that you have to have a mindset, and I think that is still there. That is still pervasively there from since 1915, and it continues today. And I think that is something that needs to be reprised. But I'll stop there because I know I'm rambling. But I'll stop there. Maybe it's
No, it's not rambling. The crazy part is no one's really wrong here in the panel, in the chat. It's how we decide to push this narrative, right? That's why we need propagandists, man. And we need them in all art forms, all media in particular, right? We don't want to dwell on the slavery narrative. We want to acknowledge it, of course, but we want to push on to something in the future. Like Trick Happy said much earlier in the conversation, we got to be pushing this idea of being revolutionary, of changing some shit. That's really the story we got to tell. We got to tell a story where we change this shit. And again, I put that call to action out to you guys. I know, as Julie said, everyone shouldn't be a writer. You don't have to be the primary writer. Be a person who adds their thoughts. Add your knowledge base to someone who's a storyteller. This is what these white folks do.
What people don't understand is if you write a story of a group of people just winning, nobody buys that. That's why people cheer for the underdog. Whether you want to act like, oh, slavery, oh, slavery, all honestly. I'm not saying to write a story where you like Roots or like 12 Years a Slave. I'm talking about you got defeated and you came back and you overcame. So people are talking about, oh, we should write a story where everything is no. Nobody would read that book because you're already winning. That's why a lot of people cheer for the underdog. You know why you cheer for the underdog? Because you like seeing somebody overcome, and win.
I agree.
I don't understand how people say, "Oh, we should not be writing." We're slave. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to write a story about being a slave. You could write a story about somebody being pulled over and spent 30 years in prison, and then he came back. He tried to seek revenge on the person who sent them to prison. You don't want to read that story either? Because
these losing narratives, man. You stay on the losing narratives, man. Nobody want no losing narratives. Sorry.
That's because you're not a writer.
Read your roots, man.
That's because
you're probably drinking roots.
I get it. But you go. What was the last movie you saw?
What are you talking about?
What was the last? You watch movies?
No, I don't even watch movies like that.
So what?
Hey, I'm sorry, Azula. You know that movie, that scenario you talking about? He already did that movie. It was called Les Miserables. This guy got sent to prison for 30 years for stealing some bread for a stealing family. They did that movie already.
No, but what I'm trying. Okay, what people don't understand. Most of the stories have been done, but it's how you tell it.
Yeah, and if you're telling it like, oh, racism and racist, like I don't want a racism.
Why is your name Pro-Black Perspective? Why are you here, bro?
Because I'm pro-black and I got a perspective. What's wrong with you?
Yo, I'm off, man. All right.
Yeah, get off. What's wrong with this dude?
Let's Razuli really did drop off?
What's wrong with that guy?
Let's bring in RGB Guap. Oh, by the way, before RGB Guap starts, I don't know if this is the same brother from the chat, Junior, on Yuku Junior. Shout out to him who's in the chat, brother RBG Guap. Oh, how are you this week?
I'm well. Thank you, brother.
Is that you in the chat?
That is me. Yes, the O stands for on Yuku. All right. So look, I'm delighted, especially delighted. I know these sorts of purposeful, pointed conversations happen in smaller spaces, right? And I know that essentially when we're talking about propaganda and things like that, media molding the minds of, I won't say the many, but reaching that level eventually, we're exactly what we're talking about is key, right? I heard exactly what you just said, which was that everybody is essentially right. And yes, that's it. Is number one, I would consider myself to be a propagandist because I have a background in the visual arts, the branding, design, videography, editing, you name it, right? Copywriting, creating marketing materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even down to a little bit of public speaking, So I have these concepts as far as skills go, but then I also have the understanding of the nation building I'm actually a fan of bitter medicine through two books, which are Walter A. Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa and Baba Akoto's Nation Building, which
Oh,
Nation
cool.
House Nation House is a school that I am establishing a partnership with currently. Um, and what I do is I'm developing a company called Berkey, and we make creative products to fundraise for quote unquote black schools, right? Pan African schools, schools that are serious, like Nation House, Roots Public Charter School in DC. And eventually, the goal is to expand, obviously, and help all the educational institutions in the space, in the sector of the community. Um, so this is what I key in on. And yes, what the brothers were just getting into about stories and things like that, me being what people call a creative, I tend to lean towards throwing spitballs, like throwing ideas up off the wall, and never really getting low brow with it, never getting frustrated with the creativity, right? Because we're looking to when even when you and let me be specific when we talking about like ideas about stories being told. My mother told me when I was young that every story has already been told. This is true. You know, somebody's heard a story even if you think it's new or told that story. But like the other brother said, it's how you tell it, right? And this is what in the modern industrial form of storytelling, like media, right? Whether that be film or TV, books, whatever, cartoons, comic books. This is what separates what we call great, you know, the people who get the big bucks, the big studios, and all of this. This what separates them. People who get lauded and get awarded is that they figure out creative ways to tell old stories, right? Using different characters, developing the characters, right? So when we talk about this Pan African media propaganda, we talk about Haiti, we talk about Congo, all these different places. There's infinite stories. So I just try to think about it in this manner and never really get I never really hang on to like, oh, the stories have been told or black people aren't receptive to this. None of that stuff matters. What matters is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and who's willing to do it, and when we're going to start and when we're going to finish, right? So, like, when we looking at these stories, is like, think about all of the different religions, the languages, the cultures, the mythos that exist in our community and throughout history, right? You have deities, you have, um, you know, larger than life figures, whether they be nation builders, whether they be, you know, revolutionaries, whether they be just village men or village women, right? These are stories that can be told in different ways. Even when you think of, there's an animated movie called Kirikou, right? Maybe people are familiar with. This is a adaptation of a story, I believe from Senegal, of a character of a different name. But these things are possible now when we take any of these storylines, characters from our history, from our community, even down to um, revolutionary figures. If we almost turn them into superheroes, that's something I'm currently working on doing. We turn these people's stories into, you know, superheroes. We turn them into I don't want to say sensations, but we turn them into things that our people can latch on to, right? These are the things that there's not only impact that will come out of being able to mass produce this or broadcast these things to our people, but there's business that can be done around these things, right? And these are and opportunities for innovation, right? Because when you talk about creating characters, creating storylines, creating, even if it's a movie franchise, right? The fanfare that comes from it, especially when it's done well, that creates a life of its own, that creates a culture of its own. And then you're able to really not only just, empower the community, um, create, like I was saying in the chat, create visions of a future so that our people, our young people especially, can aspire to those visions. But you can also eat off of these things, you know, and these things require, when these things get created, these stories, these franchises, these things require the engagement of other industries and businesses as well. And even like the brother was talking about with Hollywood and film and TV, they, when, like, if they're doing a historical piece, once the executive producers secure the funding, obviously they strategize, they organize the entire production, they secure enough funding for things like anthropological experts, right? Organizations, let's say they're doing the Judas and the Black Messiah. Let's say that film was executed by an all black production house, film studio, et cetera, down the line, and they enlist the actual like the actual remnants of the Black Panther Party, right? The Black Panther Cubs. They actually secure funding to make sure that those organizations get paid. These things are possible, but it's just how we organize them, right? So I only wanted to touch on that to just keep the idea on not letting ourselves get frustrated when we're talking about these things, because it's all about innovation, right? It's all about just keeping a fresh mind, keeping fresh eyes on it, and coming with ideas that we can implement. And that's the creativity, like, spark. That's what creativity is. It's really for problem solving. It's not for expression with no purpose, right? And then I just want to say that is the issue that I see even outside of the media propaganda discussion, is that we in our community don't seem to realize that you need a, a core group, almost like a government, before you can have a media machine, before you can have industrialization, before you can have a militia or military. You have to have an organizing group, that these are people who not only brilliant, not only skilled, not only have vision, but are resolute. These are people who are incorruptible, as the name Burkinabe suggests, right? These are people who, no matter what the circumstance of the people at large is, they're going to stay devoted to seeing the vision through, or at least their leg of the mission, and making sure that there's a system in place so that people can step into the roles when it's their time. And so I want to, kind of, I cope in that spirit of call to action. I just want to make sure that the people who recognize that continue to seek like minds, and really fortify that organization. Just really seek to organize with people who have the governmental mind, that you're establishing something that is going to outlive us, and is going to take it take farmers, it take jewelers, it take miners, it take educators, it takes a lot of individuals. So we have to, even if we don't have those people, we have to design space for all of those people to work as a unit. And that's
I
all.
I agree. Guap, I want you to look in the description of this episode. You're probably familiar with it. There's a Discord link. Join the Discord. Let's have this. Let's have a conversation about some things, because, like many are saying in chat, and folks are saying on the panel, like, we do need to get more organized. Like you just said, it takes a bunch of people to get us out of this shit, and we don't realize that. We need all types of people providing a Pan-African or a black or an African nationalist worldview to all sorts of things that is beneficial to us, including media. And so join the Discord. Once you join, I'll reach out to you. Let's have a conversation. Azuliism, who's here, he's a filmmaker and writer. There's a few others around who make music and this, that, and the other. We're supposed to be organizing that arm of this situation with the creatives to put out these messages, put out these images, etc., that bring some uplift to us too. That gives us something to aim for in the future. So I appreciate you being here. Join the Discord if you don't mind.
Will do.
Is there any last words on this prompt? If not, seems like there's not. Lero says we have to create culture. What we see as culture are really captive traditions. Traditions become culture when they are curated, housed, protected, and adjusted within independent institutions. I like that. Let's go to shoot breeze topic number 5. We're going to end at 2. We're going to end at 2 a.m. So we won't get to all the topics tonight, it would seem. But we've been having great conversations on all the topics so far. I appreciate all the panelists and the chat who've been contributing to the conversations.